So again, we have a fantastic lineup of speakers, and I'd like to introduce you to them. So our first speaker is Mr. Harish Bahl, the founder and chairman of the Smile Group. So I believe for those of you who were here this morning do know Harish, and for those of you who don't, he's a globally recognized thought leader and spokesperson for the internet and digital world, and a serial entrepreneur who has successfully founded some of the leading e-commerce and digital media companies in India and other emerging markets. So Harish, if you can please make your way up, that would be great. Or if someone can, oh, there I see you, thank you. So please welcome Harish to the dais. Welcome back. And our next speaker is Mr. Bikky Khosla, the CEO of Trade India. Please make your way up onto the dais, sir, as you do. A bit about Bikky. He is an entrepreneur par excellence, and he has revolutionized the .com industry in trade, connecting buyers and sellers from across the globe and facilitating easy and smooth business practices. So welcome, sir. It's a pleasure to have you here. Our next speaker on this panel is Ambareesh Murthy, the founder and CEO of Pepperfry. So, sir, if you can please make your way up, that would be great. As he does so, I'll tell you a bit about him. Pepperfry.com is a leading e-commerce site in India, and prior to founding Pepperfry, Ambareesh was the country head of eBay India, and also the vice chairman of the Internet Mobile Association of India. Thank you, sir, for joining us. Look forward to having you speak. And now I'd like to introduce you to the moderator for this session, who is Andrew Campbell, the professor of computer science at Dartmouth College. And he's an experimental computer scientist working on mobile ubiquitous computing at Dartmouth. And he leads the smartphone sensing group. So, sir, can I please have you come on up to the dais? We welcome you here. As you make your way up, I'll tell you a bit more. He's currently focused on turning the everyday smartphone into a cognitive phone by pushing intelligence to the phone and computing cloud to make inferences about people's behaviors or surrounding their life partners. Or in life patterns, sorry, not partners. All right, so Andrew, I'll hand over the session to you then. You can take it over. I hope the mics are working on. That one works. I think they'll just take a couple seconds, but all of them should work.
First of all, just a quick point of correction. I'm Andrew Campbell and I work for Reliance Industries Limited. And I look after all the consumer-facing businesses of Reliance Industries, which includes our new 4G business. So just to correct the profile. Probably before we start, can I just ask a very simple question to the audience? How many people here today are online retailers? Okay. And how many are offline retailers? Okay, so it's predominantly online retail. I find it very interesting that I have with me three colleagues who are here to speak about the topic of moving from online to offline, when I think it would be fair to say all three of you are primarily concerned with moving people online. So it'll be an interesting topic. I think the first thing that I would say is that from my perspective from the US, if you look at the old adage, well, it's not an old adage, it's a new adage, of the Amazon story in terms of moving to the offline play. The question one would ask is, why are they moving from the online to the offline? Now, one of the interesting stories is that Best Buy has now been officially announced in the US as Amazon's #1 showroom. What that really means is people go to Best Buy and they look, they experience, they play, they try, and then they go to Amazon and make the purchases. So the question I'd really ask, the first question to my colleagues is, are we really talking about moving to offline as a place of retail, or are we talking about moving to offline as a place of experience, but still driving the online sale?
You know, I totally agree with you that it'll be more for experience and not for really sales, because going offline for an online retailer is going to be a big challenge. The cost, the reach, the major issues involved there. So they could look at collection centers, they could look at showrooms where people could touch and feel the product, things like that. But going totally offline and trying to sell there may not be cost effective.
I think it's at least me and Ambareesh should not do a good job on this panel, right? Because we are in the business of getting people online, and now we've been made to sit here and say, why should we take them offline? So we are a little bit conflicted. I think online businesses going offline, like we've been discussing that, what does that mean? If you really look at it from a customer acquisition perspective, maybe yes, there are multiple benefits that you can derive out of it, whether in terms of building awareness, whether in terms of building credibility, trials, experiencing the product. So there can be multiple ways. But from a pure sales perspective or from a pure revenue perspective, I think we were discussing with Andy the Amazon thing to acquire online itself. That may not be the prime reason. Having said that, I think that answer lies. The answer is different for each business. Like for our portfolio of companies, what we're seeing is that for multi-brand retail businesses, probably the reasons to go offline are much lesser than the reasons that we see for our brand businesses. So for our multi-brand businesses, maybe a warehouse sale is what I can think of an offline angle to it, just clearing some liquidation stock. But beyond that, I think at least we are better off sticking online at this point of time. Maybe the story would be different a few years from now. But let's say for our brand businesses, for our apparel brand business, Pre-Culture, or our fashion jewelry business, which is in the multi-level marketing space, offline has a very integral part to play. So like as I speak today, we have a digital pop-out store in DLF Promenade Mall in Delhi, which is more like an experience center. And we've got amazing learnings about our customers from there. They've experienced the brand, they've experienced the product, and a little bit of peripheral sales as well. So there's a connect to it. I think most companies have used it differently. Naukri.com used offline to acquire, and then the rest of the lifetime they serviced online. So the acquisition was happening offline, then the lifetime of the customer was getting serviced through an online channel. A travel company probably for their packages business, which was a more high engagement product, not a very commoditized sale. They used the offline-online component in a hybrid way, where they were finding it difficult for customers to go and make a transaction for a holiday package, and especially if it was a outbound holiday. Probably it is a more high involvement product, and pure online solution wasn't going well. So I think we have to really take two steps back and ask, what is my business, and does it really is a hybrid approach synergistic or not, right? I think there's certain businesses where it would make sense. There's certain businesses where it probably is not the time to be thinking about that.
Cool. So when I first heard the topic, and I think we were doing a quick conversation outside, I think my answer was a vehement no when I first heard of it, which is should online businesses be moving offline and so on. But then, as normally happens, you think about it a little bit more, and you realize that this is something which actually operates at multiple levels. Some of my colleagues here have called out, points where that decision would be in front of an online store. Let me talk through some more. So I think the first aspect that you should evaluate as you think of a business going, an online business going offline, is what kind of products do you sell, right? And if you sell products which are fundamentally standard in nature, if you sell products which are, Andrew had this nice term, products out of a box, then perhaps the need to go offline and actually show those products, showcase those products to customers, etc., tends to be lower, right? Because customers know that it's a fairly standard product. Where the online medium, and I was listening to the conversation that had happened in the CEO forum prior to us, where there was a whole discussion on pricing and how pricing is lower online and so on. That's the reason why prices are lower online, is because there's a whole bunch of costs which offline businesses incur, which online businesses do not. And the benefits of those pricing get transferred to customers, resulting in lower prices for customers. So for example, if, let me not name names, but if there were a large company.com which sells mobile phones, to end consumers, but without the need for having a large retail shop, the cost of running that retail shop is not incurred by that .com company, and therefore the prices of mobile phones sold on that particular site tend to be lower. They're able to part with their margins. The price realization is, the margin realization is fairly good, and the prices to the end customer are high. So if it's a fairly standard product, I think businesses, all businesses, and there are online retailers and offline retailers in this forum, need to think really hard about whether they would want to take their online business offline. Then there's the second kind of product, right, which is fundamentally, let's say, unbranded, or there is a need to experience the product that the customer has. Something like, we hear this term very often. I mean, it used to be a term very popularly discussed 3 years back. It's become lesser so now, which is that customers want to touch and feel the product before they buy it, and therefore will online commerce actually take off. There are these products which still exist, which customers want to touch and feel and buy, right? And for those products which are non-branded, non-standard, however great quality products, perhaps an offline presence enables customers to interact with the product a little bit more. And therefore, it's, let's say, from a purely showcasing merchandise to the end customer's point of view, perhaps the decision would be a little more, yes, I should think of opening showcase windows offline, right? Even for an online business. And then there are other aspects which come in. So is the product, for example, like Harish has got this company, Free Culture. Free Culture is a great brand being built online. When you have an online brand in clothing, which customers would be wanting to check the fits of, or to check the quality of the material, etc., having an offline presence to actually allow the customer to interact with the product that Free Culture sells will ensure that those customers will begin to, will first check the product out offline perhaps, and then buy it online, because they are now familiar with the fits, they're familiar with the quality that Free Culture offers, etc., etc. So I think these two are very important considerations. The other consideration, and perhaps something for marketers in the audience to think about, there are offline marketers who use the online medium for specific purposes. So there are great FMCG companies. I'm at heart an FMCG guy who used to use the online medium for things like customer research, to actually have a sense of community built out, to actually market products to specific target audiences, etc., etc. And they used to use the online medium for all of that. Actually, as online businesses get larger, the need to have direct customer feedback is very important even for an online business. The need to have customers actually stand up in front of you and tell you that, hey, this product's great, this is not that great, is important feedback that an online retailer would gain from. And all of that feedback can be obtained by online retailers through an offline presence or through an offline showcase. So like I said, I was vehemently in disagreement. Online retailers should not be going offline. But as I thought through more of this, I think there are various levels, and all the decisions on whether this should happen nest out at, or basically reference which phase of the overall product cycle or which phase of the overall marketing cycle is a particular company at.
Another point that we discussed earlier, and I'll raise the topic, again using the likes of the Amazons in the US, which is largely where we are seeing them open their offline stores. It is also true in those countries that the retail market is very well established. So the offline retailers are largely fighting for market share. They're fighting for a share of that wallet. They're fighting for 1%, 2%, 3% shift each time. Now, what that's meant is that the property portfolios in those countries are fairly well established. The price of a store in the US is pretty much established. Now, what you'll find is that a lot of those stores that are opening on the outskirts of towns where the property price, as we said, is considerably lower than it is here in India. So that you can afford to open a store, you can afford to use it as an experience, and what you tend to find in the US is that those stores then become part of the distribution network. It's how they're also enabling some of that product to fulfill through the online. So I, for example, don't particularly care where you buy, as long as you're buying my product. If I am a pure play retailer, I care very, very much where you buy. I want you to buy it from me. So you have to establish whether you're selling the product or whether you are the retailer. And by that I mean, are you the brand itself? Are you the person that makes the product? So if you're Procter & Gamble and you're selling shampoo, I don't care where you buy the shampoo as long as you're buying my shampoo. But if I'm a retailer, I absolutely care where you're buying that shampoo. So what that means is that portfolio of property becomes very, very important, because I think it was mentioned in the earlier session, the price becomes the driving force when you're buying that product. So how many people here would go online and look for a product, or would go to the store and just shop around and have a look and then make the purchase maybe the next day or the day after? Show of hands, how many people would do that? Find out about the product before they make the purchase. Quite a lot of people. Now I'm guessing that you may do that online or you may do it offline. If it's a product that's sold in a box and you already know about that product, you may well go straight to the online to make the purchase. If you don't know much about that product, you may well go to an offline to start to learn about that product, and you may well go to one of those, a Best Buy, and experience it, or you may go to a Samsung store or an Apple store and find out a lot more about that product, and still go back to the online to make the purchase. So I think the challenge is the price of the property versus the price at which you're going to sell the product. Does that make sense to you?
If I could add to that, Andrew, the other thing, and I think as this decision comes up in front of folks who are looking to take online businesses offline or offline businesses online, the two business DNAs are very different, right? In one business, let's say the online business, right, the customer is interacting with you through a website but is not there in front of you. While in the other business is not there in front of you. You have to have tons of strengths, lots of partnerships with service providers who get the product to the customer, the ability to manage through or estimate what the customer's information requirements are, provide that upfront to the customer while the customer is on your website, as opposed to having it in an offline experience where that information can be provided by the retail store person as and when the customer asks for that particular information. So the DNAs of these two businesses are very different. So typically you'd find in offline stores there's a large concentration of folks who are on the storefront, and then in the online business there's a large concentration of people who are in the service and delivery area. So even the way the teams are composed, the nature of let's say the KPIs that run these two different kinds of businesses tend to be very different. So it's a decision which needs to be taken with after serious consideration.
Andrew, I just want to touch a very basic point. E-commerce is new in India. We try to follow whatever is happening in the developed countries like the US or UK. But the situations are so different, and markets are so different, the customers are so different, and everything what has worked there may not work here. You need to localize it. We're looking at, why are we discussing this topic today? Because Amazon is doing it. That's the reason we're looking at it. But this market is totally different. What works there may not work here, or may work after 10 years. So it's probably, I feel, going offline for retailers would not make sense today. I mean, cash on delivery. Do you think it will work in the US? I mean, we found a solution because we didn't have enough credit cards, or people didn't want to pay by check payments. So we got to localize things and look at it from that point of view.
Actually, cash on delivery might be a great reason to go offline. At least you get your money up front rather than wait 30 days to get it.
I mean, collection is the issue. Collection of that money is also a cost.
To make it very simple, I'm just going to throw this out to the audience. Does anybody have any specific question? So?
Would I need a mic? I have projection. So
You can shout.
what I do is, I have some experience in the digital space as a creative person, and I would say that there's very easy space between having an online presence and an offline presence. Even if you have primarily an online business, it's very, I don't need this. It's very useful to have at least a token offline address on your online portal, because psychologically that boosts sales, because people know that this is a real business and there's somewhere they can go to redress problems, and vice versa as well. I mean, in today's world, if your business is primarily offline, you do need, a bit of an online presence, to it which will boost sales. I don't know what you say about
I, so I agree with you vehemently. Uh, uh, so just to give you an idea, I mean, and sorry, this sounds like a blatant Pepperfry plug, but Pepperfry is predominantly in the home and furniture space. That's where we do like 70-80% of our business. And there are no furniture brands out there really well known. So for example, if and we sell like several crores of furniture a month. Now, if I were to want to have customers interact with my furniture, here's a great way I could do it, and we're planning to do this in one of the cities in India. To actually have, say, 4 items of furniture, which which basically communicate to the customer the kind of quality that it stands for, tie up with 150 furniture stores, have a shop in shop, have 4 items of furniture, and then the rest of the entire experience is off the online catalog, right? So I agree with you vehemently. I think there is a wire media, there is a midway which could work. I just think that the important question there is it should be clear as to what you're looking to build. If you're looking to build trust, perhaps a great move. But if you're looking to drive transactions, might not serve you great amounts of transactions in the short term.
briefly, if I may. I'm not talking about a wire meter. What I'm saying is even if your business is totally online, it is very helpful psychologically to feature on your website an offline address, which is kind of a small bouquet office maybe where you have some products. Because even the person who's buying online, psychologically for him, it's, and vice
Which is
versa.
more or less the norm in the industry today.
Hi, Ambareesh. The answers can be given by Harish or Ambareesh both, if you can. What do you see the concept's point of view? There is an online and there is an offline. There is a concept is in between, which is the click and mortar model actually. So like there is an assisted networks are there, like Suvidha for example, and there is a person is there who is browsing through your online this one, but processing the transaction there, the placing the orders, collecting the payments, and the fulfillment is being done by the any of the online who is there on the board there. How do you see this as a model in India specific, where 92% of the population which is not online right now? So do you think that this will bring the additional new consumers into the ferry, where there is a, the consumer who are getting, so what this brings is either trust, human interactions, so there is a person who is assisting there is a payment collection services, and also if it is required to delivery to some extent, if it is required. So I think these are the gaps which are there currently in the e-commerce in India. Do you think that this kind of a model can fill in those gaps right now?
From my perspective, I agree with that principle. I think that India is very different in the way that it will develop over the next 2 or 3 years in the way that it uses the online and the offline space. And let me give you 2 examples of that. In India, the concept of trusting your local Kirana to deliver the products to your home on the basis of a phone call is taken for granted. In the US, in the UK, and in developed markets, that principle of trusting someone to deliver fresh produce to my house that I haven't selected is very, very hard to get online. Very hard.
Yeah. So
in India, I think it'll be a lot easier to get online.
So exactly the same point which is bringing in this particular model, where the a retailer or the person who is there, the kiosk which is there, is a neighborhood guy, and the consumer is being dealing with him for some other services day in day out, and if he gives the trust, though the back end we have to ensure, he gives a trust that if anything happens to this product or fulfillment or the deliveries or anything, I'm there. So there is a human touch is there, and that can solve a lot of problems in this regard.
And I think you're right. I think that's the first point, that there is the basis of trust, that I trust that the product will get delivered. The second point I would make is that in the West, the concept of broadband, the concept of using a PC, using a tablet, using a smartphone is much more established. In India, if you look at broadband penetration into the home, it's quite small. I think it's 10 to 15%, something like that. The rapid growth in India is through mobile. It's accessed through smartphones. It's accessed through tablets. Now, in the UK, for example, tablet sales are not as great. They're not in decline, but they're certainly not seeing growth. Nothing like the growth that you're seeing here in India. So what I think is going to happen over the next few years is India is going to see the growth of broadband bringing customers online, but they're going to come online having experienced it mobile first. That's a very different way of shopping than the West. So I think India will actually experience a different way of using the internet than the West does. And I think we're going to see culturally a slightly different approach here. It'll be very interesting to see how that develops over the next couple of years.
Okay, we have one question over there, the person with the mic.
I'll answer this after. I'm sorry.
Now, how do you handle last mile delivery for these bulky products? Because a lot of these courier companies won't, use COD for service.
That's the secret sauce, right?
Yeah, I can tell you, but then I'll have to kill you. No, so you're right. I mean, it's very challenging, right? So when we set up Pepperfry, and Pepperfry is less than a year old, right? So we set it up Jan of last year. We picked a category which was essentially the home category in a lifestyle space where everybody was basically selling clothing, right? So it was interesting, and I think we were perhaps smoking a little at that point in time. What we didn't know was how that category would scale up, right? So we went through our fair share of learnings, and we follow a very interesting logistics model. We call it the hub and spoke model. The way this works is we have centers where so you know that Pepperfry further complicates life by being a marketplace and not having inventory with it, right? So we, once we get an order from a customer, get the item delivered to a hub, which is a Pepperfry hub, from which now we've got scale enough that we have road transport that leaves every day across all the metros in India, wherein they are all transported in bulk to a second hub in a particular city. So if it's Bangalore, they would all be transported to a service provider hub in Bangalore by road transport because these are large bulky items. And at Bangalore, the last mile, so the bulk would be broken like a good FMCG, CNFA chain, and the last mile delivery would be done through local partners. So we went through a lot of learning. We went through shipping out individual items of furniture using, Blue Darts, etc. of the world, direct from vendors, but it doesn't work. So it's something that I think the folks on the panel touched upon. It's India, and you got to try out Indian stuff to solve Indian problems, right? And I think we did a lot of that as we grew our home business.
Wouldn't that drive up the cost though?
Yeah, and that's the interesting part, right? Here's the really interesting part of selling home lifestyle products. You have margins.
I really wanted to say that, but then I thought maybe you don't want to reveal that.
So if you're selling mobile phones, yeah, cost is a very big consideration, and I do believe that everything needs to be, toned down and so on. When you're selling lifestyle, you have the money. I mean, you make enough money.
Fair
Just to finish your question, I know you like pointing at me. So I think what you're saying in a way addresses the opportunity or the challenge that everybody said in a different manner, right? And so let me say the merit of it first, right? The merit of what you're saying is so one, you're making yourself available for every touch point of the same consumer, right? Because as a consumer, I am a consumer, right? So I meet you online, I meet you offline, I'm available everywhere. So I think that's one macro benefit. From a merit in what you're saying, if you fundamentally look at it, which is the biggest problem the offline retail faces today in India, I think it's the cost of real estate, right? That's what is killing it. And if you really ask me what is the biggest problem that the online retail today faces is the last mile, whether it is distribution or payments. So the solution that you're proposing kind of addresses both, because you can have a smaller outlet or a smaller retail space and do something what Ambareesh pointed out, that the best sellers are there in physical thing, and then the broad catalog that an internet shopper is used to is still available through a kiosk. But you're investing less per square feet cost, and you're increasing your revenue per square feet, like typically how a physical retailer measures it. And at the same point of time, you have payment. The one cost which physical retailers don't have is post-buy cost, which I think online retailers, 25% roughly of their revenue today gets shaved off in the post-buy scenario, which does not exist in a physical retailer's P&L. A big portion of that kind of gets eliminated by setting up a small I don't know what you call that, but a small shop in shop or a small center there. So I think that's the plus of it. Theoretically great. One should try it, I would say, but does it scale? How scalable is it? Can you do it at a national level? Is this the right time? Where does it lie in the priority list? Like, is it like in the P1 to P10, or is it like in the P30 to P50? I don't know the answer there. So I would.
Sorry, can we
Scale
take the
point
rest
of view, it is already there, 3,000 towns and cities and 50,000 touch points. That's the scale, already there. So can we leverage that scale?
No, so Suvidha, I mean, my answer is the Suvidha kind of model does take care of a whole bunch of payment-related issues. I think what Harish is also indicating is that's one component of it. The other is the shipment component, right? So I think trust payments, fantastic. The scale exists. And with models such as Suvidha, that scale can be leveraged. The issue is if the shipment starts. So, again, shameless pepper fry plug, but 1 year old, we've serviced 1,057 towns in our country in 1 year of operation, selling fairly different kinds of products and not selling mobile phones, right? So 1,057 towns, the problem's not only getting the money, it's actually getting the product in, right? So I think what you're suggesting solves part of the problem, but part of the problem still will need to get solved.
Okay, we don't have a lot of time for any more questions. I'd like to take one question from Twitter, and if the organizers tell me we have one question, that we have time for your question. So we have, can online brands going offline ever be able to compete against offline players? Have you addressed that already, or is that a fresh question? Fresh question? Okay, so it's not addressed to anyone specific, so I'll ask the Andrew.
Short answer is yes.
Short answer, yes.
Yeah, and I think I can prove it with some analogy that online retail, if you see it as e-catalog, right? E-catalog business. India never saw catalog retail, but if you go to the developed world, catalog retail businesses have made it big in the offline world, right? Victoria's Secret, there's so many of them, right? So if a catalog retailer who was not in the physical retail business went there and could make it so big, I see no reason why not.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's a difficult question to answer in the sense that are you competing on price? Are you competing on experience? What are you actually competing against? If it's price, one expects to be able to buy things cheaper online. Period. I expect to buy it cheaper online. I take it for granted. I expect to buy something in a hypermarket. I expect to buy it cheaper than in a niche retailer. It's a fact. So it's the value of the carrier bag syndrome.
I think yes. If online retailers go offline, given for certain categories, surely, I mean, competition is actually going to be fairly easy. Just to give you an idea, I don't know of many offline retailers in India who can actually offer you 650 kinds of tables that you'd want to buy in an offline location. But there are good online retailers who exist who can offer you that. And so just the customer selection that online brings to the table, I think is a strong competitive advantage. And it's an advantage that customers seek a lot of value in.
I can answer this question as a retailer myself, pretty straightforward. Should offline retailers start charging store visitors for providing touch and feel experiences they already do? It's called margin.
Very simple. Okay, I think we're out of time for this session. Thank you so much to the panelists and the moderator. Andrew, sorry once again that I didn't have the correct bio for you. It's introducing someone who's totally not here.
Far more impressive than the one I have, so I'm happy to have it.
All right, so a big round of applause for our panelists and the moderator for that lovely session. Thank you.